Hello and welcome to the Franchise Tag Podcast Talk Show. Week 11 is in the books. It was a wet and windy one from what we've been told by Sky Lawrence Pank, who was over in Madrid for the Washington Commanders Miami Dolphins game. The Dolphins coming out with the win, obviously. Welcome back, Adam, as well to the show. Sky, how was Madrid in comparison to, you've been everywhere this year for the international games. You've been to the London ones, you've been Dublin, you've been Berlin, you're Mr. Jet Setter, you are Mr. Worldwide. We have to get you a bold cap.
Yeah, I didn't know if you were going to play International Love by Pitbull and Chris Brown. No, it was great. I guess stating the obvious, but the Bernabeu was just as good as it says on the tin with that recent renovation. Have to check the new camp out next to see the comparison. But yeah, I think to go from the NFL really nailed it this year with the history of, having the Olympic Stadium that we covered off last week. Now the Bernabeu, I think there's clearly a thought process in it. It had a Tottenham feel and that it felt ready for NFL. You still had the general, Freddie will know this more than Adam, but we've definitely told him, the questions about the field, which do get a bit repetitive and annoying. I'm sure even players and coaches are sick of that. But I think now that narrative will hopefully shift because the places that they're going to are clearly NFL ready. And I think Spain embraced it and good for them to get overtime as well. 2 overtime games.
Yeah, back-to-back overtime games in Europe. But obviously Melbourne next year, and that'll be at I think that might be at the MSG,
Yeah.
That's a big ground to fill. That's like the 6th or 5th biggest ground in the world. It's really big. It's over 120, I think.
It's big. That's all I know.
I was thinking they played a Boxing Day test there, but maybe don't.
Stop pretending you know anything about cricket.
I used to.
So you don't know it now.
Welcome to the cricket episode of the French. No, it will be tough to fill, Fred, because I think, like you said, with Brazil, they didn't go for the Maracanã first. They were a bit, I guess, cautious. They picked mid 40,000 seater, maybe because they didn't know if they were going to fill it out. But with Australia, they must have clearly mapped the market out, and sending the Rams helps.
Yeah. Well, potential Super Bowl winners, Rams might be going there. If anything goes by what Adam said from day dot of the podcast this season, the Rams will be winning it all. And I mean, that's not really out the realms of possibility at this point. So that should be a good game. I've been to the MSG, but outside. I've not been in. And it's steeped in, you talk about like historical, like that is obviously it's history that we don't really learn about or know about really in this country, but for Australian history and Australian sporting history, it's a really big deal. There's like fantastic brass statues all the way around of a lot of cricketers and a lot of Aussie rules football players as well, and people like that. Like it's a magnificent stadium. I mean, it's huge. It's also surrounded by a park as well, so I can imagine the like tailgate pre-game scenario there is going to be a lot of fun. But Australia does have a lot of laws that are quite stern and strict about drinking and stuff like that as well. So like it might not be as like freedom based as maybe as I feel like with Madrid and Germany, the games I've been to, obviously Madrid I didn't, but it's a lot more, do what you want sort of aspect rather than here, over here it is a little bit more controlled. Obviously Tottenham's not hugely controlled, but I think there will be.
Have we? Yeah. Is it not the M? Because MS is that not? Were you saying S and I just said S by accident?
I think it's MSG. I think it is the MSG.
MCG. The MCG.
MCG. No, I would say an MSG.
Oh. When Adam said cricket, then in my head I was like, yeah. But so Madison Square Garden versus Melbourne Cricket Ground.
Melbourne
cricket. It's got to be cricket.
Melbourne Cricket Ground. Is that what it stands for? I think. I have my friend in Melbourne did go there for the obviously this was going to be unreal being there, but the Australia Lions game, the second one as well, where we won the test this summer. And he said it was just like mental. And he's been there a few times for the they call it Anzac Day. I suppose it's like it's a national holiday where they play a massive Aussie rules football game. And he says it's just like nuts. Like they completely sell it out. It's like a massive thing. So yeah, that would be cool to go to, but have to see where funds take us in the 2026 season. Maybe get some more bets on for the bets for Adam and Andrew do over on our betting show.
there's more there's more chance of Shador Sanders winning a game as a start of the season than me going to Australia.
See, you had to go there just to annoy Andrew, didn't you? You had
Yeah,
to go there.
Freddie said Andrew's name, so it just set me up perfectly for when he listens.
Well, let's begin today tonight's show with talking about a subject very close to home for Adam, and that is the Packers, and maybe a problem with the Packers as well. I mean, they did just beat the New York Giants 27-20 over the weekend, now sitting 6-3-1, second in the NFC North. Have got the Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears competing with them to try and take that top spot, to try and win the division. I suppose Packers are still in it to try and win the NFC North. But Adam, it's not all cheese curds and gravy for you guys over in Green Bay, is it?
Thankfully, no. I don't think I'd want that. No, it's not. It's not been. It's difficult because obviously, like, the record kind of speaks for itself that they're doing okay. 6-3-1. It's not the end of the world by any stretch, and they're clearly still in the division. But I feel like that's mainly more due to the Lions sort of slipping up a few times as well, rather than just us. But yeah, it's not been great. I mean, which angle do you want me to go down here?
Or which angle do you think's the worst?
Well, see, I feel like it's a lot of people are sort of. I think a lot of Green Bay fans are going on Matt LaFleur is what they're going for the most, rather than anything else. And I just kind of feel like that with him and Jordan Love, because there's criticism for both, but a lot of fans are going for LaFleur, and I just kind of feel like the problem isn't necessarily that either one of them is the real main issue here. I actually just don't think they particularly gel that well together. I think the way that, if you think about the way that Matt LaFleur wants to coach the team and his play calling, and when you think about where he's come from, and he's come through the Shanahan coaching tree and the McVay coaching tree and all that, it focuses very much on having a strong running back. And, you've had Todd Gurley, you've had Kyron Williams now as well at the Rams, you've had Christian McCaffrey with the 49ers. And it is very much about having that strong running back. And then you have a quarterback who, they can be really, really good. I mean, Matthew Stafford has been great for them. But Jared Goff, a lot of people wouldn't come out and say that Jared Goff has been the best quarterback around, yet he got the Rams to a Super Bowl sort of thing. When it comes to the 49ers, you've got your Brock Purdy's and people like that, with Mac Jones. They're winning games, but they're not the best quarterbacks. I think where the problem comes in is they're very happy, them sort of guys, to take the short passes. They're accurate passers, aren't they? That's what they are. I feel that Jordan Love isn't that. He's not, like, if you want to take it purely from a Green Bay Packers point of view, he isn't Aaron Rodgers. He's more Brett Favre. And when you remember Favre, it was a case of, like, there would be loads of, he would throw the ball loads of times, and some would be interceptions, but there was a lot of good plays in there as well. And he'd get into a rhythm, and you'd do it lots and lots of times. And the more he threw it, ironically, the better he got. And I think that that's kind of what you're dealing with Jordan Love here. So for me, you've got a quarterback who needs to keep throwing the ball and isn't really getting them opportunities to have high games where he's throwing the ball all the time. And I think that is kind of almost like it's stunting him to a certain extent. I mean, if you look at some of the game logs and the amount of times that he has passed it, against Dallas, he had 43 attempts that's kind of that's very high, but it's kind of like that was one of his better games, against who else was it? Again, say like against Pittsburgh, 37 attempts, 29 completions. It was high passing volume, looked a lot better. You then look at some of the other games this season where it's like in the first game against Detroit, he was all right, but it was all kind of quite small, dink and dunk, and it's about having other guys like Tucker Kraft and Josh Jacobs, especially, who are kind of getting yards after the catch, and that seems to be how LaFleur wants to play. So I feel that the two just don't really mesh that well, and that's why I think you're starting to see this sort of it's going okay, but it could be going better. It is kind of what I would say.
Yeah, looking at the passing yards he's had in the last 10 games, only 5 of them has he gone over 200. So half of them games, Sky. And I get where you come from. That it does feel like LaFleur is a rush first style coach, and that does limit Jordan Love to a degree. However, the counter argument is, I think, when we say that Love isn't as accurate as Rodgers and he's more like Favre, and we've said this on this podcast a lot of times, is that Love is a lot more of a gunslinger like Favre than he is a sort of precision QB like Rodgers. Do you think that Fleur's sort of using the running system because he's trying to protect Love more? Because he's had a lot of interceptions in his career, and he's one to gunsling and he's one to go a bit gun ho. And is it more of like I'm trying to keep a cap on him because it means we retain the ball better? And you listed off the running backs there, Adam, with San Francisco and with LA. I mean, you've got a pretty good one yourself in Josh Jacobs, and you had 2 pretty good ones in Aaron Jones and Dylan as well. The season, but not last season, the season before that, I suppose. So, Sky, do you think he's doing it to sort of just keep Love in check? Is it a game plan thing, or is it more of a maybe luring these teams towards the back end of the season in a bit of a false sense of security?
I do think that he's a coach where I remember saying to Adam, I think it was off air last week, that even when I was in Green Bay or around the area in September, there was already question marks about like his play calling and stuff. And I think he's clearly such a smart offensive mind that maybe he overthinks certain game plans. Like that Eagles game was probably one where they could have been attacked, but it didn't happen. He just kept calling so many inside zones. You saw the memes about it. But like even this week with Jordan Love, like I think it was 7 drops. Yeah. And that's happened before with these Packers wide receivers. I mean, it's lucky that Christian Watson has come back and sort of emerged as a guy who can make big plays, because I feel like this has happened like more than a handful of occasions where we've looked and gone, wow, if they just had a wide receiver 1, which they were Matthew Golden's a rookie, but if they just had a standout guy, then I think we might have a different narrative over Jordan Love. And again, if it was a few adjustments on the play calling, but the protecting thing, Fred, that might come into the element of when you do get those drops and he thinks, oh, I don't want my quarterback to get frustrated and force something even more. Let me be a bit more conservative with the approach here, because we are playing a team that's only got 2 wins and we'll still find a way, because, the defense stepped up. Evan Williams got the interception late on. I think it was more, without being harsh on the Giants, it was more a game where Matt LaFleur probably thought they're going to beat themselves at some point and we've got difference makers, so we will be fine. I think the big concern is just how does the play calling go forward when 5 of your next 7 games are NFC North opponents? That's going to be where the big test is, because whilst I think they are a resilient team, they are messy, and you can't be messy against the Lions and the Bears and even the Vikings to a degree.
Yeah, all these NFC North teams, they're going to punish you if they get given the opportunity, aren't they? Say they get to the playoffs. I think they will, but say they do, wild card, let's say, rather than winning the division. Well, we can play both scenarios, I suppose. And they do crash out straight away. Is LaFleur then under some scrutiny and maybe on the hot seat? Because When, from my point of view, he took over in 2019. He's 73-36-1. He's only missed the playoffs once, and that was in 2022. He's won the division 3 times and been to the NFC Championship twice. Admittedly, that was with Aaron Rodgers by his side. It hasn't been with Jordan Love. Now, they drafted Love. We know the story. I won't go back into that history again, but I think it's got to be some stuff on Jordan's shoulders here where you're like, well, we've given you time to develop here and you need to be more accurate. And this is what our offense is. He's known about this. LaFleur knows about him. And yet, as Adam, you pointed out, a lot of people are already getting on LaFleur's back already. And I'm not totally sure that's the person they should be getting on the back of when Sky alluded to multiple drops in multiple years. I have to admit, this year you've been actually pretty decent. This Giants game was a bit of an anomaly for you guys, but historically it wasn't at all because that happened a lot within the history of recent. So surely there's got to be some onus on the players here as well, not just LaFleur.
Yeah, I think it's a fair assessment to come out and say it's not just the coaching. I mean, obviously, but then it's that same old story, isn't it? You get it in any sport. It's easier to get rid of the manager than it is to get rid of the whole squad of players, sort of thing. So it's a difficult one, but I think that it is fair to come out and say that the players, some of them maybe haven't performed as well as what they could have done. Obviously, there's been some, losing Tucker Kraft is a huge blow for the team in general, and they're just not going to be able to operate in the same way without him. So that's a massive loss. I don't think you can really blame anything on the defensive side. I think they've been pretty good this year and they've done really well. So that's fine. But I think the reason that LaFleur's getting the criticism is because it just feels very slow. Like the pace of play on the offense is incredibly slow. They want to run the ball all the time, and I think that that's probably what he's always wanted to do. When I think about it, when he was the OC in Tennessee, obviously, you had Derrick Henry, so it kind of like it made sense to do that. But it just kind of feels like this is what he wants to do. He wants to run the ball a lot. The pace of play is quite slow. It is about having a more accurate quarterback than having an aggressive quarterback, so to speak. And that it just hasn't been the case in Green Bay for the previous 30 years. It's a completely different way of doing it. And I think that people, obviously there was always that argument, wasn't there, when Aaron Rodgers was around, where it was like, who was actually running the offense? Was it LaFleur calling the plays, or was it just Rodgers changing it at the line and doing what he wanted to do? Which I think when you look at how different it is now compared to what it was, it does make you feel like Rodgers was probably just making it up on the fly and just throwing it to Devontae Adams all the time. So it's difficult to get away from that. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's not just Matt LaFleur. Of course, it's not just him. There's multiple things, and there's going to be a lot of fans out there who are going to come out and go, "Just shut up. You're winning games. Shut." Compared to what other teams have to go through. So it's like it's not the end of the world. You're talking about a team who are who are still competing to win the division, and as you say, will probably be a playoff team. But yeah, I think there is I think LaFleur is. I'm not going to say he's on the hot seat, because if he gets into the playoffs, he won't go. Like, they won't get rid of him if he does get into the playoffs. Even if they lose one game, he won't. But I think if they don't make the playoffs, then maybe he does become like they will maybe look to make a change.
I just think it's like so ridiculous that
he's
even like seen as someone that could be kicked out. Like, I mean, he's been incredible for you guys. And
the problem is they've invested, haven't they? Heavily, and they'll come out and go, now is the time. Now is, and if you can't make the playoffs in a year when the general manager has gone, here we go. Exactly. Yeah. That's a problem.
I did want to double check though. You are only 15th in attempts in the league, and passing wise, you're 24th. So it's not a huge drop. That's not a huge drop. You've had 312 passing attempts to 278 rushing attempts, which numbers wise obviously doesn't make, you know, obviously it's less rushing, but you're further up the board with in terms of the amount of attempts, etc. That's neither here nor there. One interesting thing I did hear on a podcast I was listening to on Monday morning was, wouldn't it be really fun if Kevin O'Connell and Matt LaFleur swap places? Because Kevin O'Connell is such an air raid throwing offensive mind, and yet Matt LaFleur is such a running back mind. And actually, if you swap them teams, they would probably do very, very well on their retrospective teams, because that offense, you know, JJ McCarthy, completely used to a running style offense. Two sets of good running backs. Aaron Jones is injured, but Jordan Mason, a good running back as well. And then O'Connell, yeah, right, he wouldn't have Justin Jefferson or Jordan Addison over at Green Bay, but he still have a plethora of talent on that wide receiving room, because there's plenty of names to use throughout his game plan, I suppose. Let's move on to our next topic. And are we now seeing, Sky, the favorites for the Super Bowl? And are the booking Broncos, not the rude booking, I said, Broncos, are they the favorites now? They just went and beat the Kansas City Chiefs 22-19 in a divisional game. That brings the Chiefs down to 5-5, the Broncos up to 9-2. They're 6-0, undefeated at home, 6-0. Massively important, I think that is, when you're going to go try and do a deep Super Bowl run. They've won 8 in a row. They're currently top of the AFC West and the AFC, but they're joint with your New England Patriots, obviously. Is this team going to go all the way now?
I have to, I am guilty of only talking about the things that I predicted, which might be correct. I did say the Bears in the NFC North, just to circle back for 1 second, which was linked, I believe, on the same episode, or maybe around the time, where I said it could be a Broncos Buccaneers Super Bowl, which I think got some laughs at the time.
You did get some laughs at the time. You're still only half right, though, with that.
Oh, yeah, Tampa's too banged up, and I don't think I actually... But the Broncos, this is when Sean Payton said that quote that, now that more people picked up, or I remember saying to you guys, what is it, the 9th team that he believes could go all the way. I think if he'd said that on a Drew Brees type team, you probably would go, oh, he's stating the obvious. But that was a big statement. And I know Bo Nix, I think Bo Nix is actually the perfect example of, how everyone in sport nowadays is obsessed with stats. Right, he played a good game, as in, like, he played a clean game. Like, he didn't do well if he was a fantasy quarterback. Trust me, I had him in one league. But in terms of actual quarterback play and game managing, I think he did all the things that Sean Payton would want. The defense got to Mahomes; they made it difficult. And yeah, I mean, Mile High is probably one of, if not the most difficult stadium to go on the road and play, because altitude, all of that stuff factors in. And I think this game, I've even seen Denver media say it, this game was probably the biggest game at Mile High since that 2016 AFC Championship, when they beat the Pats 20-18. That last Brady Manning game. Like, there's a buzz in the air around Denver at the moment. And I think the main reason is the defense. We always say it, again, stating the obvious, but anyone who knows the NFL, even in an offensive, rule-heavy league, the defense does come up big in the playoffs. And without being harsh to teams like the Colts, I would think, well, someone like Bo Nix has his critics, but Drake May's playing better. I still think there's a lot of arm talent there, and he's a guy who could lean on a defense to win a Super Bowl, as opposed to a Daniel Jones. I think that there's something there where we saw at the back end of that shootout with the Bengals last season. Like, when he wants to get going in that fourth quarter, it can happen. So yeah, maybe I think they're a top 3 power ranking team right now. I think anyone who puts them outside the top 3 is probably just being a hater, which is weird for me, because I don't even really like the Broncos, but I like this Broncos team.
I think you could have them out of the top 3. I think you could do they could be in a top 5.
Yeah, but when people put them outside, I think it's just because people have some gripes with Peyton and some gripes with Nix. I think it's more personal things than actual critiques of the team.
Still holding on.
They're not a sexy pick, are they?
So are they going to make it to the Super Bowl? Was the question.
Well, not over my Patriots.
Well, this is where I was angling. I was like, what is he going to say?
No, are they gonna? I think after you beat the Chiefs, the most a team that's been just had their own dynasty, then yeah, why not? If I was putting my normal hat on, I would probably say if Denver has the 1 seed and the road
Stay
goes
at
through
home the
there,
whole time, yeah.
then
And
I
you
would
just
say yeah, they make it.
Yeah, and you just said about how they've won 8 on the bounce, and we've just said how hard, probably the hardest stadium to go to at the minute.
Yeah.
I mean, they'd probably be a bit miffed that they're going into the bye. Really, they probably want
I
to keep
wouldn't
the
want us to
momentum
go
going.
there. That's probably the one stadium I wouldn't. I'd even rather go into Arrowhead, honestly, given how the state that the Chiefs are in.
Yeah, it just seems to be, Bo Nick's now 2nd-year quarterback. Him and Peyton have many times you've seen them sort of drawing on the sideline at each other, and it is like it's rookie and vet, isn't it? That have just come together. And like Adam, why do you think it is working between Sean Payton and Bo? What do you think is it that makes them two sort of click? Do you think it's that Bo takes it all on, but maybe Bo challenges him a little bit? Do you think it's that Sean's been around the block where he can listen to, he knows how to deal with the quarterbacks? I mean, he didn't have loads of quarterbacks in New Orleans, but he had one particularly very, very good one for a long time.
Yeah, I think with Peyton, obviously he's considered this sort of like offensive mastermind, isn't he? Where it's like he knows what he's doing and all of that. And I think maybe that sort of friction between the two of them kind of helps to sort of create the magic that seems to be happening. Obviously, this is a team that is heavily reliant on the defense. Of course, it's like there are limitations to what Bo Nix can do, but I think the one thing that Nix has got in his favour, and I think you've seen that, is that there's a lot of fourth quarter performances where it's like at the end of games, that's when he actually comes alive and he has that sort of spark about him. And that's very Mahomes. That's kind of like, it's very similar to that. And he just sort of has that ability to really be able to pull it out the bag when he needs to, whether it be through passing touchdowns or using his legs. So I think that's kind of how it works a little bit. And you need to have a really good defense in order to be able to win a Super Bowl. And I think that they've got one of, if I don't know if they've got the best defense, but they've certainly got one of the best defenses in the league. The offense, it feels like it's missing like some star names to it, but in a way that's why it's working, because I think they kind of are quite a team and quite all integrated together. And I think that's what you're kind of seeing that a little bit with the Patriots as well. It's that kind of like, there is no star really. I mean, I know Diggs is there, but he's kind of like not quite the same as what he used to be. And I think that makes a difference, where it's almost like you're probably not getting any problems at Denver. It's like everyone's very much on the same page. Peyton's kind of like taken the whole thing. He's literally, the first thing he did is walk in and basically get rid of Russell Wilson. So it's almost like having that, I'm in charge, you're all kind of like, we're all a team together. I think that's where it's working really well. Going to Mile High is going to be a nightmare for anybody. So yeah, I mean, if they can get the first seed, then it's going to be tough for anyone to get a win there. So yeah, they look really good, and I just think that at the head of it, you've got yourself an incredibly good head coach who's been around the block and knows exactly what he's doing, and a quarterback who, okay, maybe he's not going to be the best quarterback in the league, but he kind of has that clutch gene about him that all the best quarterbacks have.
I have a mad stat off the back of that.
Go on.
Adam set me up perfectly. So Brady 3 times in his career, Manning once, are the only quarterback since 2012 to lead the NFL in pass attempts and make the playoffs. Because normally someone who leads pass attempts are people on bad teams. Like, I think Sam Howell had it a couple of years ago. Apparently Drew Brees 3 times in his career even led that category. and all 3 years they had like 7 wins and didn't make the playoffs. So yeah, obviously we've mentioned 2 of the best quarterbacks ever. So I think it just shows what value I know he has his criticisms, but like Adam said, he has that clutch gene. I mean, Troy Franklin's emerged, which has helped. That Oregon connection, that's made it a bit nicer for him. But yeah, it's just something about him where he just comes alive in the fourth. And there's a lot of great quarterbacks that we've seen which do the opposite. So I think he should be commended for that.
Well, the negatives are, though, that he does lack polish, though. He does lack polish. And this team has been incredibly inconsistent, Sky. I mean, I've always pounded a drum for the best teams win in spite of being bad. And I mean, look at the results. Really, they lost week 2 by a point. They lost week 3 by 3 points. They then beat Philly in week 5 by 4 points. We saw them beat the Jets by 2. They beat the Giants by 1. They beat the Texans by 3, and then they beat the Kansas City Chiefs by 3 as well. I mean, I think it sort of stinks of Minnesota to me, the Minnesota of last year, where they were in a lot of close, tight games, and the season before they were losing them games, and then last season they seem to be winning them games. And it feels like Denver this year are winning them games, but it's not particularly smooth and always that attractive is the thing. What I think Denver fans are getting worried about if there is a potential playoff push is just the inconsistency so far. I mean, they're playing Washington. They're at Washington. They're at Vegas. That's 2 wins there. They then host Green Bay, tough game. They host Jacksonville, tough game as well. They're at the Kansas City Chiefs, and then they host the Chargers. So them 4 last games are really 4 big games, and they really need to, I think, start getting some momentum and some consistency, Bo and the offense, against Washington and the Raiders. Is that an unfair criticism, Sky?
No, I think that's fair. I mean, obviously, their defense is 3rd in points and yards allowed. So it's not like the Broncos do need Nix to, be at a high level every week. And then, like you said, he's only in year 2. I think we see that he's at his best when he's running RPOs, and maybe he doesn't have to stand in the pocket and sort of, process too much with that timing and reads element. But their offense, that they're pretty much bang in the middle with all the metrics. So if they can just elevate that to even like 10th to 12th, as opposed to like 13th to 17th where they are, to click by the postseason, then that would be perfect. Because if then they can lean on the defense again. So when you said it stinks, this stinks to me of that Super Bowl team where Peyton Manning had no arm. It's almost just like the defense can carry them. But the good thing this time is they've got a second-year quarterback who, when needed to, it can click. He just needs to calm down. And look, these next 6 games are going to be a learning curve for him. But the biggest positive, we've spoke a lot in the last couple of weeks about teams and schedules. They've beaten the Eagles and the Chiefs. 2 teams who've been Super Bowl winners in the last 3 years. And again, something that's probably not talked about enough because it is quite an open year. But when it's come down to beating a team, whether they might not be at the height of their powers, they'll still beat a team that have aura about them. So, to answer your question, I think it's a fair criticism. But if they can just get a little bit higher in some of those offensive metrics, I think that, if they get the 1 seed, it's pretty much Super Bowl for them. But I would say Bo Nix on the road, that's where the getting rattled might come in.
I mean, on the road, he's not been on the road that much, He's been on the road 4 times this year.
Yeah, I just think
he's
a young playoff guy.
He's
they've got 2 coming up, haven't they?
Sorry, he's 2 and 2 on the road.
Yeah, they've got the Commanders and the Raiders are 2 away games coming up, which I know they should win them games easily. But I think when you look at that schedule, obviously the really tough one is going to be going away to the Chiefs. I think that's the obvious one.
I don't agree. I think that Chargers last game's a tough one. I think you're a tough one. I think the Jags. I think all 4 are going to be tough. Chiefs is the standout, obviously, but I think all 4 of them games are real tough games.
But what I'm saying is, obviously, they've got the Packers at home, they've got the Jaguars at home, they've got the Chargers at home. I think with that defense at home, I think that makes a big difference, and they become very strong. The Chiefs away obviously is a tough one on Boxing Day. That's going to be the really hard one, and that's the
that
only
might be
one
make
that
or break for the Chiefs getting into the playoffs too.
Yeah, and I actually think that's probably the only game that I would say the Broncos won't win. The others, I think they've got a very, very good chance of winning the lot.
I actually think they might lose to you because their team, your team, we spoke about the Packers before. It's quite similar in that it's a good level defense and then an offense with a young quarterback and young weapons.
And can
So
be
it'd be interesting for them to play a team that's a similar mold to them.
I would agree if it was at Lambeau.
Fair.
Do you think losing J.K. Dobbins for the season, now RJ Harvey having to step up into that starting role is going to be a problem?
I think more falls, or is it McCullough says that McLaughlin, the pass catcher?
McLaughlin, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why I said La. I think it more is how he complements it.
Yeah, I think that'd be all right. I think it probably might push it a bit more towards throwing the ball a bit more, but I still think that they'll be okay. They've got some decent running backs, and Peyton's done it before, hasn't he? Where he's used multiple running backs and done well with them. So yeah, I don't think it'll be the end of the world.
Final section for tonight, we will be talking about a team that is doing incredibly well this season, and a team we've seen play. We were in New Orleans, we were there, we were in the stadium. We didn't see them actually physically play, but we saw a lot of the players and the coaches. The Philadelphia Eagles beating the Detroit Lions 16-9 over the weekend. They're now 8-2, but as there always is, there's a bit of grumbling going on in Philadelphia, and it is firmly about the offensive side of the ball. Yes, they are 8-2, but visually, when we're watching them, it ain't looking all that great on the offense. And obviously, every team wants to dominate the opposition. The Philadelphia Eagles fans are not happy unless they dominate everybody, and therefore they think that there needs to be a massive offensive change. And Gareth, our guys here at the Franchise Tag is an Eagles fan, and he's been banging the drum for that all the season, is that they need to change up their offensive coordinator, Kevin Patullo, who's been at the Eagles since 2021. It is a first-time offensive coordinator, though, Adam. Is this just a bunch of hot air, or is there something about this?
Look, I mean, they're clearly struggling to put points up against good teams, or more to the point, good defenses. I think that is clearly what the issue is here. I mean, they only got 16 against the Lions last week, only 10 against Green Bay. They 17 against the Broncos. These are some.
Only got 31 on the books, who are a pretty all right defense.
Yeah, I mean,
they did put 33 on the Rams, but that was week 3.
They did. So look, I mean, it feels like it's not been great over the last couple of weeks, but they did. I mean, it's not. It's difficult to. I mean, it's difficult to really get that upset for them. They got 38 against the Giants only a few weeks ago, so it's not the end of the world. I think they're missing a trick in the fact that they're just not using Saquon Barkley as much as what they did last year, and that clearly worked. But you've got a different OC there. He obviously wants to run the offense slightly differently to what Kellen Moore did before, and I think you kind of have to go along with that. The only thing I would say is that this has kind of happened before and it didn't really work. They promoted from within. I can't remember who it was. They lost, but was it Shane Steichen and who was the other one? The OC and the DC. They left at the same time. Jonathan Gannon. They both went, didn't they, in the same off season? They promoted from within, and it kind of didn't really work. It was a bit of the fans weren't happy. It didn't really work. They moved away from him after 1 year, and they brought Vic Fangio in and Kellen Moore, and won a Super Bowl. So I understand why there's a little bit of grumbling because it doesn't feel particularly great. Saquon's not being used enough. AJ Brown's not happy. Jalen Hurts just isn't a quarterback that is going to win you a ton of games if he's throwing the ball a lot. It's just not going to happen. So you've got that as well. And yeah, I can see, I think there is a little bit of justification for concern, but at the same time, they've got an incredibly good defense. They just look very, very good again. And you can't, it's incredibly tough to repeat. It always has been. And so I think you just kind of have to go along with it and hope that eventually the offense works itself out a little bit. But I wouldn't be shocked if it sort of does fall apart a little bit towards the end.
Well, I agree with they should be using Barkley more. I mean, Barkley's only gone over 100 yards in one game, and that was against the Giants, which admittedly is a decent defense. But they did put 38 on them, sorry, not 33. And we all said AJ Brown gone at the trade deadline to the Patriots, most notably, is what most people were saying, because they aren't utilizing him, and they do seem to be not utilizing their best talent. I mean, but Barkley's still getting some touches, but he's not getting as much pass catching touches, I think, out of the backfield like he did last season. Sorry, just throwing stuff all over the studio. I say the studio.
Wasn't AJ Brown broke into your?
That was it. AJ Brown just came in and went, "I'm never going to the Patriots." And they're using a lot of Devontae Smith, and then Dotson, Goddard are also getting in there as well. But they aren't using AJ Brown as consistently as they were. But it's almost sort of two sides of the same coin of what we've just spoken about to what we are talking about. Denver, the exact same position with the exact same similar record, fantastic defense, exactly like the Eagles are. We're saying the Denver team are going, yeah, it's good on offense. It just needs to get a bit more consistent. The Eagles are going, well, our game plan offensive is just terrible. And yet they're in the same scenario. I would say the Eagles offense is just as inconsistent as the Denver one. But really, the only difference is one was a Super Bowl winner and has been very successful of recent 5 years, whereas Denver have not been successful for 10. Is it more of a this is our standard, and you shouldn't lower your standard, you shouldn't at all, but you're not going to dominate year on year.
Yeah, I actually think that's a really interesting point, because it's like a fan base thing. Like the Broncos have never really been known for explosive offenses. I mean, even when John Elway was winning Super Bowls, it was Davis running the ball, and I think the Eagles, as we know, they've had Randall Cunningham, Michael Vick. They've had eras of like high flying, fly Eagles fly and all that. So they do have a thing about them where they want to air it out and, see great offensive explosive plays. And the thing is, as much as everyone is, I think, a little bit 50-50 on their opinion of Jalen Hurts as a quarterback, he does always step up in the playoffs. So we have seen him air it out. I just think it's Adam said it with the change of offensive coordinator. It's just a classic case of Kellen Moore, who's probably on, they might not be the worst team now, but at points this season, the Saints have been the worst team in the league, but he's still got things going weirdly with that offense at times. And to lose that, I think it's also seen the coaching staff now as a collective. I know you guys were saying that Barkley should probably have more touches, but he's had the groin injury, and I think they wore him into the ground last year, and they knew they were going to get a ring out of it. And it's almost like, well, if we do it anymore, he might actually end up hurt even worse. Because last year they were passing it and then running it with him to convert, whereas this year they're almost being too conservative, and their third down percentage is from 40.3% to 34.9. So last year, at the end of the season, they were 11th in converting on third down. This year, they're 27th. And at times, they've been near last. So I think it's just a balance of bad play calling. Dickerson and Johnson, the tackles haven't been as good. That probably also factors into not wanting to run the ball, because it's not as easy to do so. But yes, Fred, I think it's more just like, it's just different fan bases in the league and different expectations of what you want from your team. And the Eagles are always going to have this, I don't know, this I don't know what the thing I'm looking for, but they just feel like that they should have an high-flying offense. And now that Kellen Moore's gone, I think they just have to come with the reality of they have got an aging offense as well, and they're not utilizing the right guys for various different reasons.
I think it's like I said, like it's just a standard. And when you see a standard of very high play from your team, and this is me drawing away from this is me not being critical of the Eagles fans here. I think when you see how good your team was, and then we go the next season, I suppose, you think that is going to maintain the level. And I don't know, I don't remember, I could be unfair in this though, I don't remember being there that much rumblings about, well, we're a bit worried about how our offense is going to look because Kellen Moore's gone and we've promoted within and we brought in Kevin Patullo coming in. But there was huge amount of, well, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn are both gone from the Detroit Lions. I wonder what they're going to look like. I don't feel like that conversation was really had about the Eagles. I think because they retained pretty much all of their talent for the most part. A few guys on defense went away and we all went, well, they're still pretty young. They were so, again, it's a recency bias. They were so dominant in the Super Bowl. But they really did nearly slip up against the Rams. And earlier in that season, they weren't all that good either. It was their defense that developed and got better, and their offense got better and got better. It wasn't flash bang straight away from the season straight off. So I think one of the biggest things I'm going to pull out of this was what Sky said, is that for all the criticism they can have about their offense, this offense has come up clutch in the playoffs quite consistently. And that maybe they're just one of them teams now that it's like, we don't care how we get, it's like what we've always said about the Chiefs. We don't care how we get to the playoffs, but when we get to the playoffs, that's when you got to worry about us. And I think you can put the Eagles in that sort of category now. I think the Chiefs are in there. I think the Eagles are in there. I think the Ravens could be there, so to speak. They just need, I think if they do a good run this year, you could argue that case. Historically, you can definitely argue the case. The Bills are a team that when they've been in there, they do that. The Patriots as well in history. But of recent, I'd say them and the Eagles and the Chiefs are the teams that you go in there, and the Rams actually would be the three teams where I go, I don't care how I get to the playoffs, but when we get to the playoffs, that's when we're going to perform. And I don't know. I just think, you're running away with the NFC North. You're nearly top of the NFC in general. It's a little bit uninspiring on offense, admittedly, but you look at the schedule now. I mean, you're at Dallas. I think you're probably going to hold Dallas in check. You're then against Chicago. You host Chicago. I think you beat them. You're then at LA. You probably beat them. You host the Raiders. You beat them. You're at Washington. You beat them. You're then at Buffalo. That's probably the litmus test, really. That's probably going to be the ones because the Buffalo defense has been pretty decent, not amazing, but pretty decent. Maybe the Chargers actually might be a bit of a litmus test for them. And then you end on the Commanders as well. So no doubt in my brain that these guys win the NFC North. And for most teams, winning your division and then going in, probably winning one or two playoffs, you would be satisfactory. But this Eagles team, the fan base and that organization demands more. And I'm okay with that. When you've had a recent history like you've had where you're getting to Super Bowls and getting to NFC championships, I think that's okay for you. Hold yourself to a higher standard than everybody else. I think that's more than fine. And therefore, when you are upset by the offensive coordinator, from the neutral standpoint, I go, well, you've had it so good. It's always going to be a little bit bad at some points. But you've been great all the time. That is the standard. And unfortunately, Barkley isn't playing as well this year. AJ Brown's just getting not used at all, much to, I think, the fan base upset as well as AJ Brown's upset. Do you think, do either of you think there's any risk? Let's say they lose 2 of the next 4 games, 3 of the next 4 games. Let's say they lose to the Cowboys, the Bears, and the Chargers. I still think they beat the Raiders. Do you think there's any risk? There's any risk that they'll move off of Patullo?
No, not during the season.
No.
You don't think so?
Not now. I think this is the thing. I think you've got what you've got now, and it's like you go along with it. And this is why, like I was saying, I think to a certain extent they're just going to have to deal with it and sort of like get through it, and then it wouldn't. But like I say, it wouldn't shock me if it doesn't go all 100% great in the playoffs, and then you get rid of him at the end of the season. But yeah, I mean, I'd be amazed if they lost 3 out of the next 4. I think when you look at it, to me, the Chargers away, the Bills away, they're the 2 tough ones. The rest of it, yeah, okay, the Cowboys looking a bit better on offense, but I think the Eagles should be able to do that, and they should be able to beat the rest of them. So it is kind of them 2 games. They lose them 2 games, they easily win the NFC East, and they probably take the conference, I would have thought. So it's so you're the number 1 seed, and you just sort of think to yourself, so you're going to go, okay, yeah, it's not been as great as what it was, but you're still the number 1 seed in the NFC. So
and you're going to be at home the whole way.
exactly. And you know, the other thing is, you look at the betting companies; they've got them as the favourites to win the Super Bowl. You know, and you know, they know what they're doing. They're not stupid. That's why they got them as favourites. So it's like, chances are, yeah, it's not great. However, I could see them slipping up in the playoffs, and that would be enough. Because I think unless they win the Super Bowl again, I could see them moving off of it.
But if Sky, if that happens, they go to the playoffs, they lose. Is that then going to be the spark again for what is talked about every year, actually, as well? Is it won't just be the OC going, it'll be Sirianni going as well. Because that is a bigger picture, but that is a true bigger picture of what we hear every year. And a lot of Eagles fans say it. They're just Sirianni,
they'll blame it on the OC.
Yeah, it's so useful for him when he won that Super Bowl last year. And I think everyone was saying about Kellen Moore and the offense and what's going on with the amount of elite defensive players you have. I'm not going to say you can have any DC, but I shouldn't say that actually, because Fangio did fantastic. But what I mean is that they were covering the cracks, I think, for Sirianni. But then when you're the guy who still has to lead a locker room of 53 men and you've won a Super Bowl, which not many people get to do, he's fine for at least another year. They'll just blame it on the OC, because I think, as much as I don't think they'll make the Super Bowl, the way that they play and the players they have, they're not going to get blown out in the playoffs. They'll lose a tight game or by 10 points.
You can imagine it'll be a bit like the Rams in the snow.
Yeah.
This last season. Sorry.
It is annoying because if they do get the home field advantage, again, it's a place that you don't want to go, and they're probably benefiting. No, sorry, they are benefiting from being in a weaker division, to say the NFC West. But I think there's at least 3 or 4 teams who I think I would be confident in saying would probably beat the Eagles if they both in the playoffs. I just think that as much as they're winning games, the difference is I know that they definitely are in that sort of Chiefs and Pats of history category. But as much as I was singing Jalen Hurts' praises before, I still don't know about it. It's very hard to click the play calling to just like start dialing it up to AJ Brown. Whereas Mahomes and your Brady, they've always sort of they are in rhythm regardless. I think it's asking a lot with this OC to get Jalen Hurts in rhythm again to have another postseason run.
For someone who, like, obviously with your team, the stand, like, I go back to me saying about the standard and the fan base standard. Like, your team for the longest time was, fantastic, an absolute dynasty. But was there the same reaction with certain aspects of losing, with game style, etc., with your fan base as much as it is with the Philadelphia fan base?
The only time it probably happened in the history of the Pats is when we went 10 years without winning one. Got blown out by the Ravens in, I think, 2010 divisional round, had lost to the Jets the year they made that championship game. There was a famous game, actually, the year that we beat the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. The Pats got blown out like 42-14 at Arrowhead by Alex Smith's Chiefs. And then that's the famous we're on to Cincinnati game. I think the thing that was quite good is that we know that Sirianni, he shows his emotions, whereas you had Bill Belichick, a guy who could manage the media and to protect the players. And it was a different era. But I think it is a fair comparison in that Boston, all those East Coast teams, the media is all quite similar. They're all ready to bite and and nibble. That is a very, Boston, New York, Philly thing. And they all actually, in their own way, have their own entitlement of thinking that they should be winners and contenders. So that plays a factor. But yeah, it happened on a handful of occasions. I think it just happens when you have big expectations, because regardless of what we all say about the Eagles, I mean, clearly the roster is a Super Bowl contender. It's just that the things are not in the right place in terms of who's calling plays.
Well, there's no sense of entitlement in New England anymore, mate, because you guys are going all the way, aren't you? You're going to the Super Bowl.
9-2, but I think the amount of people in Madrid that got sick of me, I don't even had a drink, just tapping people with Drake May Rivals jerseys on, going, hey, maybe, baby. That's all I kept saying, but
Maybe
P. I'm proud of that. But yeah, we're back. There you go. Pats Eagles Super Bowl, and let's settle the series. It's 1-1. Let's see what happens.
That would be fun. Sky, Adam, thank you very much for joining me this evening. And thank you, everybody and anybody who has been watching or listening to this podcast. Make sure you like and subscribe to us on YouTube and on every podcast platform. And make sure you catch us on social media as well. We've got the college show coming this week, back with Alex and Andrew, as that is very much getting now into the sort of playoff contention and teams now. I mean, there's a few mock drafts I've seen knocking around as well, so maybe keep an eye out for that, for people who are wanting to get into college football or maybe getting ahead to the draft next season. Of course, we have the betting show with Andrew and Adam on at the weekend as well. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this show, and we'll see you all again very soon.